Okay, so welcome to the second seminar of this academic year of the Minerva Center for the Rule of Law Under Extreme Conditions. It's a day after our national elections, and many of us are in a state of shock, but maybe it's a good reason then to look away from our problems in Israel. And we are very happy to host today three promising and young researchers from North Macedonia. As you know, the Minerva Center has an annual call for support in various categories of research. And the three young scholars won our grant for a very interesting project on which they will talk today, exploring individual drivers of violent extremism in North Macedonia through life course trajectories. And it's a very interesting methodology and very interesting focus. And I think that despite the fact that we are looking today on North Macedonia and not on Israel, there might be very interesting implications to the Israeli story. So as I said, we have today all three researchers who conducted the research, Dr. Angelina Stanojoska, Dr. Ilijevski, and Dr. Kire Babanoski, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the names correctly, you will correct me. Both first two, Angelika and Ish, are associate professors at the University of Kijevo in North Macedonia, and Kire is an independent researcher, and they will present us their research for about 40 minutes, and then we open the floor for questions. Those who are interested to comment, question, protest, please indicate that in the chat. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salzberger, for the introduction. So just a second, Greg has shared his screen. So just a short introduction for the research, and then for the three of us, and we will start with the right presentation. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to be here, although we are online, so I hope that one day we'll have the opportunity to meet physically. And of course, thank you to Minerva Center for organizing this event and for giving us the opportunity to share our preliminary findings from our research, which is, as already Mr. Salzberger mentioned, about the exploring of the individual drivers for violent extremism in North Macedonia by using a criminological theory from the area of the developmental criminology, or the well-known life course theory, which includes analysis of life course trajectories. So actually the team behind the research, which is conducted by the three of us, so it is me, Angelina Stanojoska. I'm an associate professor at the Faculty of Law, University St. Clement in Bitola, and a Fulbright alumni. And with us also are Professor Ilijevski, who is also an associate professor and vice dean at the Faculty of Law, University St. Clement Bitola, and Dr. Kire Babanoski, an independent researcher. The three of us hold a PhD from the Faculty of Security in Skopje, and of course we know each other from the student days. So how we got the idea for the research? Well, me being a criminologist, I have a focus of interest on the criminological theories, especially the strain theories and the theories from the developmental criminologies, which are focused on the life trajectories. And Itz and Kire are more scientifically interested and have more experience in researching terrorism and violent extremism. So the three of us, we found a common point of interest, and we used it to develop a research idea, questions, and methodology for researching violent extremism and radicalization through the developmental criminology and the life course theory. Now, I think that everyone present and listening got the idea who the three of us are and what are we going to talk about today. So I think now that we can start the real part of the job and tell you something more about the research and about the preliminary findings and conclusions. At the beginning, something more for the Balkan Peninsula, for North Macedonia, and the current situation and legal framework for suppression of terrorism and radicalization and violent extremism. Will tell you our colleague Kire. So Kire, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angelina. Distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this seminar talk at the Minerva Center. In my part of presentation, I will address some aspects of legislation for fighting extremism in North Macedonia. But first, some words about our country and the neighborhood in order to better understand what is behind it. The Republic of North Macedonia has a specific geostrategic and geopolitical central location on the Balkan Peninsula, surrounded by countries with different cultures, traditions, historic backgrounds, ethnic groups, religion, experiences, etc. On the Balkan Peninsula, some of the countries shown on this slide are members of the European Union, namely Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Romania, and Slovenia. And in addition to that, they are all NATO member states, including Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. The countries that are not part of the EU belong to the Western Balkans region, or WB6, because it has 6 countries. The Western Balkans was one of the regions that experienced the most difficult transition because this process was accompanied by bilateral and multilateral conflict, local and regional wars, and political and ethnic clashes. Consequently, the Balkans were politically fragmented on its map as well, and the fragmentation of the Balkan came from many historical, political, economic, military, geopolitical, and strategic reasons. This process also had consequences for the integration process of this region, and the international community has actively intervened in the Balkans, namely in the conflict period in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, and North Macedonia, and the international presence being civilian and military. Our multicultural, multinational, and multi-confessional society in the past has faced serious challenges and threats to human rights and freedom, peace, tolerance, and other values. Through its territory, especially through the valley of Vardar River, passes the so-called Balkan route, a route used by arms, drugs, and human smugglers. Refugees also use this route to the great extent in the recent refugee crisis. During the crisis, it's believed that many radicalized people who are supporters of or who have previously participated in terrorist activity have passed through this route. With the wave of illegal migrants coming across the Turkish and thereafter Greek border into North Macedonia, it's impossible to tell how many more ISIS fighters have entered the Balkans since. The president of the country, as well as the Minister of Interior, in 2016 emphasized that the terrorist attacks across Europe, which shocked the whole world, brought with them fear and danger to every citizen living Europe. Many foreign fighters from the battlefields in Syria and Iraq are fleeing across Europe as refugees and migrants, and in that vein, some individuals or entire groups of extremists have passed through countries along the Western Balkans route, in addition to refugees and economic migrants. The Republic of North Macedonia is no exception, because as a central point in the Balkan, it's a key link in the route of movement of migrants. So far, it was not a target for terrorist acts, but a ground for the spread of radicalization, recruitment of extremists, and logistic support for sending them to the battlefields. On this slide, you can see some data from the Terrorism and Foreign Fighters database developed by the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, which contains information about all convictions for domestic terrorism in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia. It contains also data obtained from the verdicts from trials of people accused of going to fight in the conflicts in Syria and Ukraine from 2010 until the end of 2020. This database showed that 18 persons from North Macedonia were convinced of going to fight in the conflicts in Syria. The Republic of North Macedonia is a sovereign, independent, democratic and social state, and its sovereignty is indivisible, inalienable, and non-transferable. According to the last formal census from 2021, the population in the Republic of North Macedonia is less than 2 million people. Overall, 32.3% of the population is Muslim, and religious beliefs are predominantly divided along ethnic lines, with most ethnic Macedonians practicing Eastern Orthodoxy and ethnic Albanians practicing Islam. As a small country, we cannot influence geopolitical trends, but as a matter of interest to geopolitical actors, we have to build a policy and support action that will strengthen our geostrategic position and increase stability in response to violent extremism, radicalization, and terrorism as an evident growing international threat. In the Republic of North Macedonia, special attention is paid to terrorism and the fight against it. From 1996, under the Criminal Code, the criminal offense of terrorist engagement of the constitutional order and security has been prescribed. Furthermore, in 2004, another crime was established, terrorist organization, and in 2008, two more crimes, terrorism and financing of terrorism. Specific to these crimes is that in the previous period, their content was direct to several changes, stating their essence and prescribing stricter sanctions, and in 2009, they became subject to prolonged confiscation. Because of the new form of terrorist acts and the spreading of the phenomena of radicalization and violent extremism, in September 2014, the Macedonian Assembly adopted changes in the criminal code that section the recruitment, training, agitating, logistic financing, and participation of persons in war conflict outside the country and in foreign paramilitary and terrorist organizations. The revised legislation introduced a new criminal act participating in foreign military, police, paramilitary, and para-police formation in order to prosecute the Macedonian citizens who have in different way participate in paramilitary terrorist organization in foreign country. The variety of criminal acts of the Criminal Code of the Republic of North Macedonia have recognized the efforts of the country to proceed and implement all international efforts to combat terrorism at the national and international level. From a normative point of view, the framework of the number and type of criminal offenses is solid. The most recent radical groups in North Macedonia are pinned down by various researchers to the names of two influential self-proclaimed imams in Macedonia. They both have embraced a violent form of fundamentalist Islamistic ideology and spreaded the creation of youth group, bringing in Jamats or para-Jamats, and many of the men active in those networks ended up in Syria and Iraq, while the rest continued to spread the fundamentalist ideology through online content. In order to better respond to the complexity of the fight against terrorism and extremism, the Macedonian authorities in 2017 established a national committee for preventing violent extremism and fight against the terrorism. This concept opens a new chapter in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism in Republic of North Macedonia, where the emphasis is placed on the need for greater cooperation and involvement of all institutions in the system. This body has goal to increase the efficiency and the coordination of the institution and their activities in direction of more successful and more efficient dealing and prevention of violent and extremism and terrorism. As a result of this collaboration is planned a better monitoring and evaluation of the activities advised in the National Action Plan in the area of preventing and dealing with the violent extremism in North Macedonia. The strategies are focused on the measure to combat the violent extremism and terrorism from an aspects of prevention, defense, protection of citizen and property, criminal prosecution, remediation of the consequences of a terrorist attack, coordination, and national and international cooperation. One can clearly state that there is a wide range of institutions with a direct or indirect agenda related to the issue of radicalization and violent extremism in present-day North Macedonia, from the state-sponsored institution on a central level and research institutes to local municipalities and NGOs. Yet several studies indicate the gap and the lack of a more structured form of cooperation between all stakeholders in the national setting. The operations cell in the first criminal operational action of the Macedonian Security Agency for suppressing participation in foreign army, police, paramilitary, and para-police formation by Macedonian citizens. The action discovered several dozen people, some of whom were found in the country, some were inaccessible to law enforcement agency, and some, according to the information, were still active fighters in Syria and Iraq. Following the searches and the arrests, trials were conducted in which 25 people were convinced. The cell operation is another indicator that the institutions of the Republic of North Macedonia have the capacity and the credibility to deal with the current security challenges and are a serious partner in the global coalition to combat terrorism. The result of this police action was obvious in the direction of a drastic decrease in the number of Macedonian citizens who join ISIS or other formation in Syria and Iraq. However, this does not mean that extremist ideas, the process of radicalization, and the threats of committing terrorist acts have disappeared from the Republic of North Macedonia. This is confirmed by the two police actions in 2020, in which a terrorist group in the Republic of North Macedonia composed of foreign fighters was suppressed. The terrorists communicated with each other on the internet application WhatsApp, where they have agreed on how to transport the weapons and also agreed on how to make suicide belts. The Ministry of Interior informed that the terrorist cell planned a series of attacks on public buildings, liquidation, but also suicide attack to cause as much panic and fear among the citizens as possible. According to all this mentioned previously, we set the research goal, which is to identify and explain the life course trajectories of incarcerated individuals who've been violent extremists and radicalized, to expose individual level experiences, motives and drivers for engagement in violent extremism in late adolescence and emerging adulthood, and to explore intricate intersection of biography, social context, and life course contingent dynamics of both group and self-narratives as a useful approach to understand why, how, and when people came to engage in such behaviors. Now, I would like to ask my colleague Kire to explain the methodology used in our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ice. I hope you hear me well. First of all, I would like to say thank you and to express that I'm very happy to be part of another Minerva activity. And also would like to say thank you to Minerva Center for supporting us in conducting this research. And thanks also for all of them for attending this meeting. Now I would like to continue with a brief explanation on the methodology that we used in this research. Just to check, yeah. The research explore, as it's said, intricate intersections of biographies, social contexts, and life course contingent dynamics of both group and self narratives. We consider this as a useful approach to understanding why, how, and when people come to engage in such behaviors. The engagement in the violent extremist group in the studies was checked through a series of these three steps. The first of all is a weakening of immediate informal social controls. Second one, interaction with individuals in proximity to the group. And the third one, a phase of meaning making in relation to the group and one's identity, resulting in an individual willing and capable of engaging in the group's activities, including the use of violence. You will read all these steps again later in our presentation, since the study is organized through all these steps. Here I would like to also add that this research on the factors of radicalization and violent extremism in North Macedonia is giving added value because all the other research and studies on these topics in our country are scarce and mainly conducted partially, which means only in certain aspects and often exploring the factors separately, so without taking into account their interactions and mutual relations and dependencies, let's say. That's why we decided to offer a different approach and to explore the individual factors and the social drivers that push people towards radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. Now I would like to mention the methods used for obtaining information in this research. The first one is the literature review, by collecting, critical analyzing, synthesizing, and explaining the overview of current knowledge in the publications. For example, the surveys, studies, analysis, reports, scientific research, etc., but in an integrative way, allowing to identify relevant information and gaps in the existing research and to generate new frameworks and perspectives. The second method is the content analysis for a better understanding of the life trajectories of extremist and radicalized individuals. And it was conducted to the available judicial verdicts. These verdicts are passed for persons, and some of them are actively serving prison sentences in the country at the moment. And some of them have already served their sentence and who have participated in a foreign army, police, paramilitary, or para-police formations according to Macedonian legislations. It's talked about this before, about this type of crime, which is already prescribed in our criminal code. And the third method is the interview. Specifically, here we mean on the life history interviews, and they were conducted with the prison officers, prison employees, responsible for resocializing the prisoners. And although maybe this methodology looks too ambitious from our side, using all these three methods at once, however, it turned out that it was useful and relevant. Why? Because we faced certain obstacles or limitations in obtaining relevant information by each method, which were relevant for our research, of course. So the other two methods gave added value and complement the necessary findings. I will explain more about this in the next slides. First of all, about the literature review, as I said, it contributes to examining the life course perspective theory, and especially how it can be applied in identifying drivers of violent extremism in the country. So also information from open sources, media, police reports, court newsletters, published research, publications, etc., for the life experiences and events driving the individuals into this type of radicalization and extremism were also collected and analyzed and also summarized at the end. About the content analysis, as I mentioned before, we conducted content analysis of the verdicts, judicial verdicts passed for foreign terrorist fighters and those prevented to travel to foreign battlefields because they attempted to commit this crime. But although the initial plan was to analyze their prison files, to determine their background, psychosocial profile, and their behavior. But with the newest government decision from this year, the access to all these files, the prison files, is not allowed, since they're classified now as a confidential. But however, available information about the prisoners and their backgrounds, their childhood, etc., was found in the other open access articles and research dealing with this phenomenon, but from different angles and perspectives. And yeah, I talked about these prison files and how did we deal with the gathered data. We developed huge analysis sheets in which all the data which were collected, systematized, and classified regarding the following features, or let's say categories. First of all, the demographic characteristics of the offenders: age, nationality, education, profession, property status, marital status, children, then the family relations, then the childhood, hobbies and interests, psychosocial analysis for their personality, the previous criminal activities, and any type of risk factors that have been present during their lives before committing the crime, presence of other types of factors that could influence any possible desistance of criminal behavior, then reasons and motives for committing a crime, and their behavior in the prison and the attitudes towards the crime. And you can see that we underlined most of them because they were very relevant for the study and for testing this criminological theory. About the interviews, I would like to mention that also it was not possible to reach the convicted persons for violent extremism in the state prisons due to several reasons. First of all, it was not allowed to conduct interviews with these categories of prisoners. The other reason was that a large number of them are already free now, and it was very hard to locate them where they are now at the moment. Then the communication and cultural barrier with the prisoners, then the risk not to be opened with the researchers, and the last but not least, the security risks for the researchers to involved and to engaged in the interviews, these types of persons. That's why we decided to conduct interviews with prison psychologists and I mentioned before, who work with the prisoners from the very first day they enter the prison until they leave. They work on individual profile assessment and counsel them so they can really provide solid information about their backgrounds. For this aim, we got a permission from the State Directorate for Execution of Sanctions, and we reached prison officers from 5 prisons throughout the country to conduct these types of interviews with them. The interviews are semi-structured, with teams covering the individual's life up until the point of the interview. And they include 2 groups of questions. The first group of questions are extensive questions about their childhood, school, family relations and experiences, and so on. So everything that happens with them and anything that happens to them up until the moment they engaged in some types of extremist activities. And second set of questions were about their experiences with radicalization and violent extremism, including the processes of recruitment, of engagement, organizing within the groups, and disengagement and resistance processes. And here, yes, I would stop here, and you will hear from me once again about the other different aspects of this methodology. But now I would like to ask my colleague Angelina to continue and to explain you a little bit about the criminological analysis of violent extremism. Angelina, please.
Thank you, Kire. Here at the beginning, actually, I would like to tell you something about when most of the authors started to research violent extremism using life course theories. actually criminological theories. So there was a case study in 2000, from the 2015 January terror attacks in France. And in that case study, the authors argued that criminological perspectives actually could be used so we can understand the life experiences and biographies of individuals who have engaged in violent extremism, and to try to situate their experiences in a macro setting into the society. So they said that maybe one way of approaching could be the life course perspective. And parallel with them, some other researchers have been using the subcultural theory, the rational choice theory, the control and learning theory, and the situational action theory. Why the life course perspective? Because while it is grounded inside an individual biography, actually it includes and entails some other contextual elements, and it is interested in how actually our lives unfold as a result of the social organization. Include actually focusing focusing in parts of our lives or life course stages, like the adolescence and the emerging adulthood as those positions in social structure. The most known research in the life course theory is the Sampson's and Laub theoretical model. It is one very well-known chronological research that have been conducted through a 70 years of period. Actually, the authors didn't do it for 70 years, but they used data gathered from the Gluck researchers in the 1945-46, and then actually found some of the individuals that were part of that samples as juveniles, and actually analyzed them as adults. So their theoretical model is grounded on the social control theory, and they say that criminal behavior is the result of weak or attenuate social bonds to society. So the model indicates that stability or change through the life course theory can have correlation with criminal behavior. So the two main hypotheses there in their model are, first, they say that childhood antisocial behavior, no matter what, juvenile delinquency, some disorder in conduct, violent temper, or any other kind of unacceptable behavior, can be linked to a variety of troublesome adult behaviors, including criminality, general deviance, other kind of offenses, economical dependency, economical or educational failure, or any kind of a failure during an adult life. And these long-term relationships are posited to occur independently of the traditional variables, such as a social class background or ethnic origin or race. Race because Sampson and Laub actually have conducted their research in the United States. And the second hypothesis is that social bonds to adult institutions of informal social control, like are the family, the education, the neighborhood, work, and colleagues at the workplace, influence the criminal behavior over the life course trajectory, despite the individual's delinquent or antisocial background. So that this model actually postulates that although some people who develop strong conventional bonds in childhood may have these bonds attenuated later, and that actually can start a path to criminal involvement. But also we can have a reverse trajectory. That means that some of those individuals emerging from childhood with weak and very weak conventional bonds may have positive pro-social experience later, And those experiences can be, let's say, either in the school with the conventional peer group or maybe some other community activities. It doesn't matter. They need to be positive experiences. And this can actually strengthen their conventional bonds in the community and can set them towards a non-criminal path. Everything I have mentioned before can be used in the same sequence in every point of individual's life, including the adolescence, the young adulthood, or the middle adulthood. The life criminology, actually, for the life criminology and developmental criminology, age is the key concept. So the changes individuals go through as they proceed from childhood through adolescence and then to young adulthood and middle adulthood actually are basic building blocks in nearly all the theories of crime and resistance, starting from the 60s in the previous century to even 2017, 2018. So during adolescence, parents' supervision decreases. The importance of peer and romantic relation increases, and the individual spends more time away from home and more frequently actually engages in pastime activities. So following adolescence comes a stage in life, which is the period between 18 and 25, which is the emerging adulthood. Its most central feature is that this is the time when young people actually explore the possibilities for their lives in a variety of areas. And the exploration here takes more place than in the adolescence, and also includes exploration of values and religious beliefs. This is why the young adulthood is really important when we actually analyze violent extremism and radicalization through the life course theories. Later on, freed from the constraints of informal social control, the individual starts to be available for a number of influences, starting from peers or people that are around in everyday life, or gets the possibility to be influenced by alternative role models. And the studies conducted until now have shown that people who are at risk to be radicalized and engage in violent extremism tend to associate with people who already are radicalized. This is less known about peer groups in emerging adulthood, especially firstly in adolescence, but mostly in emerging adulthood. And behaviors such as crime and engagement actually can be engagement in violent extremism can be understood as processes during which the person forms a conception of the radicalized behavior in the interaction with others. As Kire mentioned, we analyzed a lot of data from judgments and from the interviews, but using the judgments that are publicly available, we have concluded that there are several demographic characteristics that are important for the research. So we have also, as Ita mentioned, 29 persons that are convicted for domestic terrorism, as well as for traveling to fight in the conflict in Syria, starting from 2010 until the end of 2020. And they are convicted for either the crime, the second ones are convicted for the crime participation in a foreign army, police, paramilitary, or parapolice formations. So all of them are males. If we analyze the age group is between 19 and 50 years, but most of them are between 19 and 25. So like maybe 70% of them are in the emerging adulthood period, especially the young adulthood period, where people can be influenced by other groups or peers or alternative models. And it is a period where we still form the values or our religious beliefs. So it can be changed and influenced by other social groups. All of them are ethnic Albanians. There is one ethnic Macedonian. That study case compared to another one, you will hear something more about it by Kire. Most of them have finished secondary school. Few have primary school, and some of them are have graduated from faculty. Those that have graduated from faculty in most cases are leaders, but there are some of the followers. Half have been unemployed, and the other half are regular workers. One of them is a self-proclaimed imam, and the other one is a physician. Half of them are single, half of them are married. So here there is actually, with being married, half of them have the informal. So one of the main keys from the informal social control, having an intimate partner or being in a relationship with someone, and half of them have children. So it is another key aspect from the informal social control. Something more about the typology before going to analyze some of the predictor events in the radicalized individual's life. We'll tell you here, and then I will continue with the discussion and the conclusions. Thank you.
Thanks, Angelina. Yes, before we continue with the conclusions and discussions for these preliminary findings, I would like to say a few words about the typology. When we studied the concept of violent extremism and terrorism, we found out different classifications of terrorists, foreign terrorist fighters, or extremists. For example, we have initially taken into consideration the following categorization of the foreign terrorist fighters, which divides them into 4 primary types: the revenge seeker, the status seeker, the identity seeker, and the thrill seeker. I won't go further into details about each type because in sake of the time. But in our research, as I mentioned before, we developed a huge data table where we put all their characteristics available from the content analysis and from the interviews. So when we compared the profiles of the extremists based on their psychosocial and behavioral characteristics, we found out that the half of them are average types, or let's say identity seekers. The other half is equally divided between susceptible and suggestible, or revenge seekers, and adventurers, or thrill seekers. And only a few of them can be categorized as superiors, or status seekers. You can see here that we somehow changed the names of this, and we modified a little bit this typology or categories of this typology because it better fits to our findings and the profiles that we collected from the prison officers. From the interviews with the prison officers, but also with the content analysis. For example, for the average type, the first type, you can see that they're with average emotional abilities and intellectual capacity. They're positive, communicative, moderate and cautious, reasonable, careful, organized, unobtrusive. So these are some psycho and social characteristics of these persons. Also, we have the main important characteristics or features also for the rest of the types, the categories: skeptical and suggestible, the adventurers, and superiors. I won't go also further into details about this in sake of the time, but you will have the slides afterwards and you can check more about this. However, we found out that there are 2 profiles, or let's say 2 persons, that deviates from the sample. The first one is the 39-year-old Albanian, or he's a self-proclaimed imam. And the second one is a 34-year-old Macedonian, and he's a physician. So these are like exceptions from the whole profile, or from the whole group of the prisoners, let's say. The Albanian, as I said, he's a self-proclaimed imam or oja in a mosque here in Skopje, and he had a stable development in a family of 4 persons. He was attached to his family, and he completed the primary and secondary education in Skopje, and he was an excellent student. He studied geography at the University of Skopje, but he also studied Arabic in Damascus in Syria in 2000, and at the Medina Institute and the Faculty of Arabic and Islamic Studies in Cairo, in Egypt. And he was the organizer of a cell in a neighborhood in Skopje. The fact that he sent his 22-year-old nephew to fight in Syria, where he was killed in just a few days, confirmed, and this case was confirmed by the state authorities, testifies to what kind of human he is. He has a rich collection of video materials in which he preaches about the radical Islam on his website, as well as the Facebook and the YouTube channel. Many videos, lectures are attached through which he calls for participation in the so-called Holy War or Jihad in the Middle East. And he was the mastermind behind the creation of the radical Islam in Macedonia and beyond, according to well-informed sources. The second profile, or the second person, is a 34-year-old Macedonian with a medical degree, and he's unmarried, and he comes from a relatively wealthy and well-suited Macedonian harmonious family in a dominant Macedonian Christian environment and neighborhood. And he's intelligent, with a high opinion of himself, self-confident, influential, with leadership abilities, most stubborn, hypocritical, wants to dominate and prove himself. His hobby is reading books, educational, best-selling novels, but also cycling. And when he left in Syria, he changed his name and took a Muslim name because he accepted the radical Islam, which he learned about it in a mosque in Skopje. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for direct participation in a paramilitary units. And he confirmed his presence in Syria, but exclusively for humanitarian medical purposes, in accordance with the Hippocratic Oath, as he said, that is to help wounded fighters on the battlefield. And he denies participation in a foreign paramilitary and denies the crime. In the study, we have even more information regarding these persons, about their background and their behavior in the prison, the communication with the others, and the prison officers as well. But for purposes of this presentation, we think that so far this information are quite enough. Now I would like to ask again Angelina to continue from here with the discussions for the results and findings. Thanks.
Thank you, Kire. These are the preliminary findings after having the interviews with the prison officers. The first, and we are going to see again those 3 key points that are really important when we analyze any kind of criminal behavior, regarding any kind of criminal behavior through the life course trajectories. So the first one is weakening of immediate informal social control. It means that something in a person's life have happened, whether it is dropping out of school, losing a job, losing a family, losing someone important, breaking up a romantic relationship. It doesn't matter. It is an event that is really important for the person. So this is the predictor event that actually shows that maybe that person could engage into criminal behavior, but before that it needs to start interacting with someone that have already been inside actually have behaved criminally. Before explaining some of the predictor events, I can tell you that all of the radicalized Albanians and the one Macedonian had a childhood that have been filled with traditional games that were in the family that they have lived. The families have been functional. The Albanian families were traditional ones with Muslim traditional values. And when they were still children, they have started to learn some of traditional crafts. There is no family of this that we have that actually had extreme radical values regarding Islam. So they had good family relations with their parents, with their siblings, with later on with the other family members, and later on with their intimate partners. Important is that the father in these families is the center figure. So knowing that they're traditional, although there were some cases that were mentioned, that some of the radicalized individuals, when they were children, were actually victims or were victimized violently by their parents, mostly by their father. But while they were inside the penitentiary institutions, they had regular visits by family members. Also, as we mentioned, the demographic characteristics, all of them were good during the primary and the secondary school, did not have any conflicts with the other peers and pupils, with the professors. And what is important, something that I mentioned, and Kire also mentioned it, the leaders have high education, and the followers and opportunists mostly have primary or secondary education. It is because they had to start working as young. There is only one follower that actually have finished high education, that is the Macedonian that have accepted Islam and changed his name. Which actually were those important life events. So for one of the prisoners was the moment when his father, he saw that his father has committed a suicide. So when he had 2 years of age, his biological parents divorced, and he was adopted by his uncle, his father's brother, and his wife. So they didn't have any other children, so they actually adopted him. So it was a modern Albanian family, very well situated. So everything was okay until the moment the prisoner officer told us that the prisoner told him that until the moment when his father started to have some psychological problems, and the moment when he actually committed suicide. So he was coming back from the city center, saw police cars, and actually saw a body down by the building where they lived, and he realized that he's his father. So he said, this is the moment where actually nothing had sense anymore. So I started to go around the city park. I started to meet people that have been radicalized, had actually those extremes views of this of the Islam, and that is how I actually started to read more about this, and to meet those people, talk with them, and I understood that I actually need to start to learn more about this, have those values, and go and help my brothers in Syria. Another one had an important life event predictor, that actually his father was working in Austria, and everything was okay until he started to gamble. He came home, they lost everything, their house, their money. So he needed to start to work. And very young, around 17 or 18 years, while still being in secondary school, he started to read more about the Muslim religion, the Islam, and actually he started to accept more extreme views of the religion. Another one, they said that he knew very well the Quran, and his particular life event was that he actually was a drug addict. He was using heroin for a long period of time. Because he was injecting, he lost one of his legs. It needed to be cut. And from that moment, he actually started to be more close to the religion, read more about it, meet people that were not accepted in the religious community, and to go into mosques that were not registered, and to learn and hear more about the extremist views of the Muslim religion. Most of them actually had contacts after having these predictor life events. They needed to have interaction with individuals in proximity to the group, actually to have access to extremist group. How they had contact, I told you some of the examples. So most of them went to unregistered mosques, had contacts using the internet. They said that there is a closed group on Facebook where they had the possibility to meet other people. They had the possibility to have contacts through close relatives. We had one case. His uncle actually have helped the individual to start and learn more about the extremist views of Islam, and helped him to go to Syria through NGOs and through Islamic seminars. We have concluded, and also the prison officers think that the most influence comes from the unregistered mosques and the unaccepted imams, because they recruit individuals through the making them believe and giving them promise that if they go and fight in Syria, actually they will help their Muslim brothers, and the Muslim brothers from Syria will be grateful, and they will have the possibility to be very well known. And the concluding remarks are that knowing that most, like, maybe not say 100%, but maybe 98% of the criminological theories have been constructed in the American society and into American context and Western context. We wanted to know whether we can use the developmental criminological theories in Balkan context. So we have concluded that they're applicable. So we can actually use them and test them and use them to explain criminological behavior and extremist views and radicalization in the Balkan countries, not only North Macedonia. So the theory, but there is one something that have actually caught our eyes, that the theory is applicable to the category of followers, because they have the predictor events, they have direct contact with the group, and they actually make they have the third step, that when they have meaning making in relation to the group and the identity, and they accept the values. But it is not applicable in the category of leaders in extremism, because from the data we have, they don't have that event life predictor in their lives. And the conclusion is that predictors are in most life events, or the need of the sum of life events, or maybe the need to prove themselves, because the prison officers have told us that many of them have told them in the interviews and during the treatment that they have felt frustrated in their life. So they needed something to show to the society and to everyone that they have value in the community and in this world. The other concluding remark is that most of the extremist contacts in North Macedonia through non-registered mosques, unaccepted imams, internet sites, NGOs, close relatives or friends. But as I mentioned, the most interested should be put on non-registered mosques and internet sites if we want to prevent future radicalization. And something that we have included in the research is that we had a question of whether there is a possibility to resocialize individuals that have been radicalized. So all the prison officers have told us that it is a really difficult process. And we have actually proof of that because 3 of them have been recidivists. So when they left the penitentiary institutions, they actually have went back again they still had their extremist views and values, and actually were caught again trying to leave the country and go and fight in Syria. So they said that this is a difficult process, but now there is a pilot program of treatment methods that can be used in this kind of cases. So we're going to see what the results will show. At the moment, the results on the field show that it is a difficult process, and when a person is radicalized, it is really difficult to make him understand that his values are not accepted into the wider group inside the society. So that's from me and from my colleagues. On this next slide, you have our emails if you want to ask something more after this discussion. So now we are open for questions or comments. And once again, thank you very much for your attention and the possibility to tell you something more about our research.
Thank you very much, the 3 of you, for a really fascinating and well orchestrated presentation. Those who are interested to ask or comment, please indicate in the chat. I have Deborah as the first question, but maybe I'll ask before that, just conceptualization issues, because you are talking here on 4 or 5 different categories. The general theory is about criminals. In general, as I understand, what brings people to crime. On the other hand, you have talking about extremist views or radical views, what brings people to hold radical views, but holding radical views doesn't necessarily means acting. So a third group is those people who actually commit criminal acts which are on the background of the radicalization or extremist views. So this might be kind of equal the definition of terrorism. And then your 4th group is the people that you analyze, and this is specific subcategory, because those are people who went to fight. Most of them wanted to go to fight in Syria. Okay, these are not the terrorists who stabbed people or committed terrorist attacks themselves in Macedonia. Or correct me if I'm wrong. And these 4 groups might have different characteristics. So your findings are only valid to the subcategory of extremists who wanted to go to fight for ISIS and so forth, so on. And the question whether I got it right doing this categorization, and what follows that is, would you say that your findings may be applicable to other group of extremists who commit terror attacks, but they're not in the Muslim context necessarily. We know that there are, terrorism from Jews, from extreme Jews. So you think that the Muslim issue is a unique characteristic in your research? Maybe I'll stop here.
Okay, I will. Thank you very much for your question. Using this data that we have from the interviews, at the moment, the conclusions are for people that are radicalized and have tried to go to Syria, or some of them already have been to Syria. So when they were coming back, they were caught. But it doesn't mean that the theory cannot be used to explain or to be tested on any other type of criminal behavior. So it means terrorism, other terror attacks, terrorism that is not in Muslim context, because in any kind of unacceptable behavior, the criminal behavior at the focus of the life course theory. It doesn't mean what kind of or what type of criminal behavior happens. It means that something happened in a person's life that made him or her go and meet other people that have some kind of view or read. It doesn't. I don't need to go and meet them. I can only read and find something about that. Let's take Breivik as an example. He did not have that Muslim views. He did not have extremist views in context of the Muslim in the Muslim context, but he had some other extremist views. He said, "I don't like migrants in our country. I think that they take everything from us here. So that is why I'm going to do something to show all of you, the political party that was having the government at that time, that you're making a mistake." And he said, I didn't meet anyone. I was just exploring on the internet, reading and making my manifest. And one day it clicked, and I said, I need to show all of you on the field what that you're doing everything wrong. So he went and he actually did the terror attack and the mass murder. So with this data, we can give you these conclusions about radicalized people, but it doesn't mean that we cannot use it to explain other kind of criminal behavior or other kind of extremist views. So sorry, I can't hear you.
You're muted.
What was the life event that changed his course of life in the case of Breivik?
I haven't read that much about it. I just I analyzed him in the context of the mass murder, because he committed a mass murder, but I'm not sure about the life event. But I know that something happened, because in most cases, even with mass murder, something happens and then it clicks. They lose their job, they go back where they have worked, and they kill 15 people, 20 people there.
Deborah, thanks.
Hi. So it really was fascinating presentation and research, and Ellie actually took my conceptual question, but I have another question, and it's with so much insight, there's almost no how do you connect policy-wise to prevention, or to, is there some way that this knowledge is useful in a public sense?
If that's the question, I can maybe maybe I can try to answer this. In the conclusion, Angelina mentioned that most of the people, I mean the prisoners that we included in our research, were radicalized or get in touch with the extremist views and with the concept of extremism, let's say, through different ways. One was the unregistered mosque in the country, and we had that problem. I think 7-8 years ago, the Islamic religious community, which is registered community here in North Macedonia, they asked directly the political, the security forces, so the Ministry of Interior and the other social stakeholders, to help them to identify and to somehow fight against them, for example, to forbid their activity here in the country. So they publicly said that there are several mosques, and one of them was found here in Skopje, where the self-proclaimed imams were preaching and were, telling some stories and everything to their followers, let's say. So that's the first action that society or the national authorities, the security national authorities, or the other committees or other bodies, regulatory bodies in the field of religious communities can do here. The other method was through some NGOs that were financed to spread some ideology, but on a hidden way, because there is no NGO which is registered in that way for sure. So that's why our country is following the international standards and best practices. So there is a law on suppressing the money laundering and financing of terrorism. So they're controlling their bank accounts, their activities and everything. So also that's the other measure that can be done here. And in regards to the radicalization or spreading the extremist views and their opinions through the relatives, through the friends, through the family, through the peers, in the neighborhoods, etc., it is very hard. So the national authorities can't do here anything on a short period of time, but for sure, the state, the national authorities, the Ministry of Education and Science, for example, can work on raising awareness of the citizens regarding this phenomenon, regarding this concept. But it's a changing in the mindset, because there are traditional values, the conservative values as well, the misinterpretation of the religion sometimes. So it's a long period of time, so it cannot be fulfilled in a short period.
Right. So you had mentioned that most of the interviewees never finished, didn't go through the educational system.
Most of them finished only the primary and secondary school, so it's a basic level of knowledge.
Secondary is high school?
High school, yeah.
Oh, so they do finish high school.
Yes, some of them, yeah. But most of them primary school, some of them high school, secondary school, and only few of them graduated at the faculty. And they're the leaders in this group.
So is that something that the Ministry of Education contemplates? I mean, is there a requirement is there mandatory education through 12th grade?
Yes, the primary and secondary school, they're obligatory in our educational system. So the higher education, the faculty is facultative. Yes, but also in the recent period of time, there are many NGOs, so the organization from the civil society that are working the field of suppressing the hate speech, the hate crimes, etc. So they're doing many activities with the children, with the pupils during the primary and secondary schools, in order to, get to know more about the religion, about the modern values, about the moral, about the good values, for example.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amnon, please.
Thank you again. Am I muted?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you again for this very interesting and thorough and rich presentation of the research. My question is, if you could perhaps highlight what surprised you in the file. So I understand the theoretical contribution and also the empirical is very rich, but was there something that really surprised you? Something that you said in the empirics? Oh, we didn't expect that. And all of a sudden the data sort of revealed something that we couldn't have foreseen otherwise?
Angie, or I should, I already mentioned about the exceptions from
yes,
that sample.
But exceptions are always, that's the nature of exceptions. What you would expect to find an individual here, a 39-year-old here, a 51-year-old there, one. But, okay, so this makes them, but at the crux of the research.
Yes, but however, I would once again mention this Macedonian guy because all of them were ethnic Albanians with the Islam religion, and he was like really exception from this sample group of people because he was born in a Christian family, in the Christian neighborhood. He was living with these values, and suddenly he got a wish to change his religion,
right? But this would happen also to there's a famous singer in the United States that decided to convert to Islam and then became radicalized. Occasionally, you have people that change their religions and view things. This is one but you're right. It's an interesting case to study. But then the question would be, if the N is then not only Macedonian, but Christians more generally that all of a sudden see the light in Islam and become radicalized, is there something particularly unique in this particular 39-old Macedonian that you would say distinguishes him from others who go through processes of noting that this is a very small N, but within this N, is there something that would nonetheless tell us, this is really something you would not have considered?
Yeah, maybe the sample was small because we studied around 25 prisoners. So maybe that's why, I don't know, I can't remember that we found something. Maybe Angie can.
Thank you. Let's say that something that I didn't expect when we saw the demographic characteristics and some of the insights in their childhood was that they come from traditional families that have traditional Muslim values. But later on, when we talked with the prisoner officers, they told us that some of them actually come from very well situated Albanian families that were modern ones. So not that traditional. So that means that they shouldn't have had that traditional influence of the religion. They didn't have that, insight of the religion all the time when they were children, to be more interested in engaging in religious activities and learn more about the religion and also learn more about extremist views about that religion. So something I personally didn't expect. I thought that maybe most of them will come from traditional Albanian families and they will have the religious insight even from little children. So I didn't expect that. You can
be radicalized even if you have a modern background.
So that's something that's.
If we develop this, sometimes they say that, there's a saying that actually if you come from a modern background, there's something empty there's something lacking, and you seek identity, you seek a stronger sense of belonging. This is a critique of liberalism that it is shallow in a way. So you found some support to say that modernism as such is not a cure against radicalism.
Yeah,
so this is interesting.
So because some of them actually told the prison officers, as I mentioned, they need something more, that they feel that they're not enough respected in their community, that they feel shallow, and they need something more to just show everyone that they're valued, that they should be valued. So yeah,
and that would correspond with people who do interesting, terribly interesting things in the United States.
Yeah.
And some of them, they go and shoot schools or something like that. Some of them come from modern families, not necessarily, and they feel they have a higher calling to get either famous or more values, doesn't matter, and they go and become radicalized.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, what is interesting in this context is, and your research cannot answer the question, okay, what makes a difference between those who try to associate themselves with a new group, a new family of radicalization? The association is so important for them, and those who decide to act as lonely terrorists. We have such examples in our context, those who operate within very well-structured organizations, Hamas or others, and those who actually decide to take an action on their own, and they're not associated. They know they don't need the social environment. And I think what is common to all your researchees that they belong to the first group, and it will be interesting to compare whether what distinguish between the two groups, I think might be very interesting, because, many of those killers in the States are not those who ask for association with the group. They actually are maybe desperate from society, and they do an act of a lone terrorist attack in school and stuff like that. And this might be very different from your core group. You may relate.
Well, yes, because the sample we have are all of them have been in contact with other people that were radicalized. Until now, on my knowledge, I don't think that we had a case where someone was acting on his or her own. But yeah, it would, if we have that kind of case, it would be good to make a comparison what was, even in a life course theory context, what happens and why actually that person after an event doesn't need anyone else or contact with a group to engage in extremist actions.
Ido.
Thank you, Eli. Well, thank you for your great presentation. It was very, very interesting. I want to take you a little bit back to the first half of your presentation, or first third of your presentation, when you talked about the regulation that addresses the situation in Macedonia. And it seems that, well, it's not unique or surprising, but most of the regulation refers to basically a reaction to acts of terrorism or organization, etc. You think that following your research, any regulative measure can be developed in order to have any preventive measures towards the acts of terrorism and prevent people from joining?
Well, I think I mentioned something about this in a previous question to Deborah about that's why we try to detect what are the these types of methods, how these persons are engaged in the extremist activities and how they come in a contact with these extremist views and so on. So here we should find the measures and also to set the measures and to help the national authorities how to cope with the situation. Also, I would like to mention that we, as a country, we have excellent legislation regarding to suppressing, so from the legislative point of view, about the suppressing the terrorism and extremism and so on, and financing also. Regarding the strategies, regarding the criminal code, so the criminal legislation. But however, there should be, and there is still a lot of work to be done, mainly in education of the people. Let's say changing of the mindset, raising awareness about this phenomenon, etc. And that is how we can somehow prevent this on a longer period of time.
Thank you very much. Our time is up. So thank you, Angelina, Kire.